My name is Samantha Lee, and I'm 31 years old. I never thought I'd be sitting in my car outside my sister's wedding venue, wearing a dress I paid too much for, holding a gift I spent weeks picking out, only to be told by the valet, "Ma'am, you're not on the guest list." I smiled politely, pretending the words didn't slice right through me. Not on the list. No, there had to be a mistake. Gave my full name. Samantha Lee. I'm the bride's sister. He looked down at the clipboard again, then back up, apologetic. I'm sorry. You're not cleared for entry. I stepped back and pulled out my phone. Called my mom. Mom, I said, trying to stay calm. I think there's a mix-up. The guy at the front says I'm not on the guest list. Her voice was cool. Unbothered. That's not a mix-up, she said plainly. I told you not to come. This isn't your day. I felt the blood rush from my face. You what? Then she added the part that would haunt me for days. Honestly, Samantha, it would be better if you just stayed out of sight today. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Before I continue with this story, drop your city or state in the comments. I want to know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had a family betrayal that knocked the wind out of you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because you're not alone. Not by a long shot. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina. My family wasn't rich, but my parents, Deborah and Mark, owned a small bed and breakfast on the edge of town. It was a charming life, at least from the outside. My younger sister Brielle was born when I was 4. She had curls like Shirley Temple and a smile that could disarm a tornado. From the beginning, she was the center of everything. I didn't mind at first. She was the baby. Of course, she needed more attention. But as we got older, the favoritism never faded. It only evolved. If I got a B+, my mom would frown and say, "You could have done better." If Brielle got a C-, she'd say, "She's doing her best. She's under pressure." By the time we were teenagers, it was clear. I was the practical one. The responsible one. The helper. Brielle. She was the golden child. She wore what she wanted. Stayed out late. Got extensions on her schoolwork. Mom defended every excuse. Don't be so hard on her, Samantha. She's sensitive. But I never made a scene. I learned early on. Peace in our house depended on me not reacting. So I became small, quiet, focused on school and later my art. After high school, I went to Savannah College of Art and Design on a scholarship. I worked 2 jobs to afford food and rent, but I loved every minute of it. I graduated top of my class in visual communication. When I called home to share the news, Mom barely acknowledged it. "You know," she said, "Brielle just got offered a job at that boutique in Atlanta. Isn't that wonderful?" Brielle didn't finish college. She didn't have to. Her looks and charm opened doors that remained sealed to me. But I kept trying. Kept showing up. When Dad died of a stroke 5 years ago, I flew home the next morning. I handled the service arrangements. Comforted my mother. Held Brielle as she cried in a crumpled ball on the couch. And then I went back to New York, to my tiny studio apartment and my freelance design contracts. Kept calling, visiting, sending gifts on birthdays, helping with their bills during the pandemic. But no matter how much I gave, I was never enough. 2 years ago, Brielle got engaged. His name was Chase. He was tall, charming, and came from a well-off family that owned several properties around the Carolinas. Mom was over the moon. "I always knew Brielle would marry well," she gushed over the phone. "She deserves this. She's been through so much." I nodded and asked how I could help. "You're a designer, right?" she said. "Maybe you could handle the invites." Course I said yes. Over the next 8 months, I poured myself into creating a beautiful custom wedding suite. Letterpress invitations with gold foiling. Hand-calligraphed RSVP cards. Custom website I built from scratch. I didn't charge a cent. I flew back home 4 times for fittings, mock-ups, and planning sessions. Paid for my own hotel each time. Every visit I felt like an outsider crashing their dream. Chase's parents never remembered my name. Brielle barely looked up from her phone. "And Mom," She acted like I was a contractor, not her daughter. Still, I kept telling myself, it'll all be worth it. It's her big day. Be supportive. Maybe this is finally your way in. But as the wedding date approached, things began to shift. 2 months out, I realized I hadn't received an invitation. I told myself it was just a mistake. I designed the invites, after all. Maybe they assumed I didn't need one. So I asked Brielle during a Zoom planning session. "Oh," she said, distracted. "Didn't Mom send yours?" Weird. Another week passed. Nothing came. I texted my mom. "Hey, just checking in. I never got my invite in the mail. Do you want me to resend my address?" Her reply was chilling. "Brielle's final guest list is locked. She said it was getting too crowded." I didn't want to bring this up. But maybe it's for the best if you sit this one out. It's going to be a very intimate event. Intimate. It was a 200-guest wedding at a lakeside mansion. And I was being excluded like I was a distant cousin who RSVP'd late. After designing their entire wedding suite. After traveling across states to help them. I stared at the message, rereading it over and over. My fingers trembled as I typed back. "Oh, I'm not invited to my own sister's wedding." No reply. That night I didn't cry. I just sat in my kitchen with a glass of wine and the final proof copy of the invitation set I designed. I ran my fingers across the embossed names. Brielle and Lee and Chase Martin Wallace. My mother's words echoed in my head. "This isn't your day." And something in me shifted. For the first time in my life, I stopped making excuses for them. I stopped telling myself it would change. I saw it for what it was. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a decision. Message. You don't belong here. So I decided finally to stop begging to be included. But before I could close that door for good, I needed to see it through. I bought the dress anyway. I wrapped the gift. And I showed up. The morning of the wedding was bright and cool. The kind of crisp Carolina morning that felt like a postcard. I sat by the window of my Airbnb, staring at my reflection as I put the final touches on my makeup. I wore the emerald green dress I had picked out months earlier. It was elegant, understated, and tasteful, just enough to blend in, not to stand out. I didn't want to make a statement. I just wanted to be present. I just wanted to see my sister walk down the aisle. Despite everything, a part of me still held hope. Fragile, trembling hope, that this was all some misunderstanding. That maybe, just maybe, when they saw me walk in, there'd be a softening and acknowledgement. Maybe even a whispered apology from my mother. I wasn't expecting hugs and confetti. But a nod, a smile, even the barest thread of recognition would have been enough. I arrived at the lakeside estate around 10:45 a.m. The ceremony was scheduled for noon, and I wanted to make sure everything I designed, the signage, the monogrammed napkins, the printed programs, was displayed correctly. As I pulled into the private drive, the large white tents shimmered in the morning light, and the sound of string instruments being tuned echoed faintly across the lawn. I parked in the overflow guest lot, carefully took out the wedding gift I'd wrapped, an antique silver picture frame I'd found at a boutique in Brooklyn, engraved with Brielle and Chase, "Forever Begins," and made my way to the entrance. The first red flag hit me before I even stepped through the front gate. A security staff member stopped me at the entrance checkpoint, clipboard in hand. He was polite but firm. "Hi, name please." I smiled, shifting the weight of the gift in my hands. "Samantha Lee. I'm the bride's sister." He scanned the list and then looked back up, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't see you here, ma'am." I blinked. What?" I leaned in slightly. "It has to be a mistake. I'm the designer. I created all the printed material. My name should be on the list." He looked again. Still nothing. Then, without a word, he stepped to the side and spoke quietly into his earpiece. Moments later, a woman appeared. Thin, tall, maybe in her mid-30s, wearing a headset and holding a clipboard of her own. "Hi, I'm Candace," she said briskly. "You're Samantha, the bride's sister." There was a pause, a flicker of recognition, then a tight, practiced smile. "Right. We were told all vendors should arrive before 9:30. Are you here to drop something off? I felt the words jam up in my throat. Vendor. Not guest. Not sister. Vendor. No, I said quietly. I'm not a vendor. I was never paid. I did all this as a gift to my sister. I looked at her, desperate for some human understanding. I didn't get an invitation, but I assumed. I just thought. Candace shifted uncomfortably, then cleared her throat. Let me get the mother of the bride. That's when I knew. Deep in my chest, the dread I'd been swallowing for weeks took shape. My hands trembled as I held the gift. My heart pounded loud and heavy. And when I saw my mother step through the archway, dressed in a glittering lavender gown and clutching a mimosa, my breath caught in my throat. She looked stunning, regal even. For a second I was transported to childhood, to watching her get ready for church, to brushing her heels with a towel when I was little, hoping to be just like her. But the expression on her face today, cold, dismissive. Mom, I said softly. She didn't greet me, didn't smile. Just stood there with an arched brow and a small, judgmental purse of her lips. What are you doing here, Samantha? I looked down, then back up. I wanted to be here. I thought. I told you not to come. Her words were flat. Absolute. I'm your daughter, I whispered. I helped with everything. She glanced around, as if embarrassed by my presence. You weren't invited. This day isn't about you. Please don't cause a scene. I'm not trying to cause anything, I said, my voice cracking. I just wanted to see her get married. I wanted to give her this. I held out the gift, and for a second I thought she might take it. But instead, she looked past me and gave a subtle wave to the security guy. She's not on the guest list, she said calmly. She needs to leave. The man approached, gentle but firm. I'm sorry, ma'am. I need you to step outside the gates. My legs moved on their own. I walked backward slowly, dazed, blinking away tears that threatened to spill. The gift was still in my hands, now suddenly too heavy. The music swelled behind me. Guests were beginning to arrive in luxury cars. Laughter floated through the breeze. And there I was, standing on the outside of my own family's story, not even allowed to watch from the shadows. I sat in my car for over an hour. I sat, not crying, not texting anyone, just letting the silence grow louder. I thought about every holiday I came home alone, every Mother's Day gift I sent, every sleepless night I spent designing her wedding suite, every family group text I was excluded from. And then, just when I was about to drive away, my phone buzzed. A text from Brielle. 2 words. Don't start. That was it. Don't start. No apology. No explanation. Just a warning not to make a scene. I stared at those words for what felt like an hour. And then I replied. I didn't start anything. But I'm finishing it. I blocked her number. Blocked my mother's. Blocked the wedding planner and even the shared family iCloud album. Then I took the frame, unwrapped it gently, and placed it on the passenger seat beside me. It wasn't theirs anymore. Never would be. That night, I checked into a quiet inn outside of town. Ordered dinner. Drank wine. And let myself cry. I sobbed for the little girl who spent her life trying to be seen. For the woman who believed she needed to earn love through perfection. For the sister who gave everything and got nothing but silence. But underneath the grief, something else had taken root. Not rage. Not bitterness. Clarity. 4 years, I'd been orbiting a family that never truly held space for me. I had tried to fit, fold, and flatten myself just to belong. But the moment they excluded me from that wedding, they gave me something I never had before. Permission. Permission to walk away. To stop proving. To stop performing. They said I wasn't family. Maybe they were right. Because family, real family, doesn't throw you away like trash at the gates of a country club. Real family doesn't smile while excluding you from the most important day of their lives. So maybe I needed to stop trying to belong to theirs. And start building my own. The morning after the wedding, I woke up with a strange lightness in my chest. My eyes were swollen, and the pillowcase damp from the night before, but there was a stillness inside me that I hadn't felt in years. It was like the static had finally gone silent. No more inner negotiations about how to be enough. No more checking my phone for a sliver of acknowledgement. I made a cup of coffee, stepped outside onto the inn's porch, and sat wrapped in a wool blanket as the mountain fog lifted over the trees. And in that quiet, I decided I was done. Not temporarily. Not conditionally. Fully done with the games, with the false hope, with chasing love that only came in crumbs. I sent one final email to my mother and Brielle. Just 2 sentences. I'm taking space. Please do not contact me. I added. Any attempts to reach me through third parties will also be considered a boundary violation. Then I closed my laptop and finally breathed like I hadn't in years. When I returned to New York 2 days later, the city felt brand new. Loud, chaotic, messy, but mine. For the first time, my small apartment didn't feel like a lonely cave. Felt like a sanctuary. I donated the wedding gift to a local shelter that hosted couples starting over after hard times. I deleted old voicemails, cleared out photos on my phone, and even changed my number. I dove into my freelance work, refreshed my portfolio, and updated my website with the newest luxury projects I had completed, including the wedding designs I had created. For no credit, of course. But I figured they still belonged in my portfolio. I had poured my soul into them. They were my work, not theirs. A few weeks passed, and the quiet became healing. I started therapy again, this time not because I was in crisis, but because I wanted to understand why I had tolerated so little for so long. My therapist, Janine, was a kind, no-nonsense woman in her early 50s with a background in family systems. After I told her about the wedding, she simply nodded and said, "You know, sometimes the best thing toxic people can do is show you exactly who they are." That line stayed with me. By the start of the new year, things were finally shifting. I got a major contract with a boutique branding agency in Soho. They'd seen my work online and were especially impressed with the wedding suite I'd posted. I didn't name names, of course, but the designs had my signature all over them. The agency had clients in lifestyle and fashion, and they brought me on as a part-time consultant with the potential to go full-time. It felt like I was finally turning a page, building a career that matched the value I had long been told I didn't have. For once, I wasn't working to impress anyone. I was just creating because I wanted to. But peace, I've learned, often invites its opposite, especially when it threatens people who thrived on your silence. About 2 months after I cut contact, I received a cold email from a woman named Clarissa, head of a high-end wedding magazine I had once pitched my services to. I had submitted some of my best design samples, including pieces from the wedding suite I made for Brielle, hoping to get featured in their Rising Creatives section. The email was brief but biting. Dear Samantha, we've received a formal request from a third party claiming ownership over the wedding suite you submitted. Due to potential copyright conflicts, we're removing your submission from consideration. Furthermore, we ask that you refrain from submitting materials in the future that are not fully your own. Regards, Clarissa Montoya, Senior Editor, Lux Bride Quarterly. My heart plummeted. I immediately replied, attaching drafts, mock-ups, emails between myself and Brielle with her feedback on the designs, and even screenshots of the invoices from the print vendor I had paid out of pocket. I detailed that no one else had touched those files but me, that I had worked over 80 hours on those designs for free. 2 days passed. Then another. No response. On the 5th day, I finally received a short reply. Thank you for your clarification. Unfortunately, without a signed release form from the original client, we cannot move forward. The original client. Brielle. That's when it clicked. My own sister, who excluded me from her wedding, who silenced me at the gate like a stranger, had now gone out of her way to block me from professional opportunities. I wanted to scream, not because I needed the feature, but because she couldn't even leave me alone after I left her alone. I stared at my screen for nearly an hour. I wanted to call her, to confront her, to demand why she would try to tarnish my name when I had walked away so quietly. But I didn't. I'd learned my lesson at that country club gate. They didn't care about my feelings. Only about control. So instead I took a deep breath and did something else. Published a blog post. Not about her. Not with names. Just about the experience of being a designer who contributed to a major event, only to be erased afterward. About how artists often give their talent for free to people who never respect it. About the quiet theft of credit, and the louder betrayal that comes with it. I ended it with this line. The next time someone asks you to give your gifts for free, ask yourself what they value, your work or their ability to own it. The post went viral. Not tens of millions, but enough that several design communities picked it up. I got DMs from other creatives, photographers, florists, planners, who had experienced the same thing. People offered support. Several offered work. And just like that, I realized something even more powerful than walking away. Telling the truth is healing. But sharing it, that's liberation. About a week after that blog post, I received an anonymous email. No signature, no subject line. Just one sentence. You were never supposed to outshine her. I laughed when I read it. Not out of joy, but from the sheer absurdity of it all. That this was what it came down to. That my own mother and sister would rather destroy me than acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, I had worth all along. But I didn't write back. Instead, I doubled down on what was mine. Poured into my work. I built new relationships. I found clients who paid me fairly and treated me like a professional. I took long walks through Central Park. I painted again, just for myself this time. I hosted dinners in my apartment with neighbors and friends who felt like chosen family. I was finally living a life where I didn't have to beg for a seat at the table. I was building my own. Then one afternoon in the spring, I received a phone call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello. There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in months. Samantha, it's Mom. My body stiffened, but I said nothing. I know you don't want to talk to me. I saw what you posted online. And I want to clear the air. I almost hung up. But something in me needed to hear what she had to say. I never meant for things to get this bad, she said. I just wanted Brielle's day to be special. I didn't think you'd take it so personally. I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. You removed me from the guest list of my sister's wedding and lied to people about my work. I didn't lie, she said quickly. We just didn't want you making things about you. There it was again. That old script. That familiar gaslighting. That belief that my mere existence was too loud, too demanding, too much. I'm not doing this, Mom, I said finally. I'm not coming back into a story where I'm always the villain for just wanting to be seen. He tried again. Maybe we could have dinner sometime. Just the two of us. I thought for a moment, then spoke carefully. I'll think about it. But I'm not going to pretend like nothing happened. And I'm not going to be shamed for finally standing up for myself. Then I hung up. That was the last time we spoke for nearly 6 months. It started as a small dream, a quiet idea born out of late-night conversations with myself and paint-stained coffee mugs. I'd been creating again, not for clients, not for weddings, not for social media, just for me. Paint, charcoal, digital work. All the things I'd once shelved in the pursuit of approval were coming back to life. My tiny studio in Brooklyn had become a sacred place. And soon my pieces started taking form. Portraits, abstract expressions of identity, and perhaps most cathartic, an entire series I called Uninvited. It was my story without names. Canvas after canvas told the tale of being silenced, erased, overlooked. But not with bitterness, with truth, with defiant beauty. By summer, I had enough pieces for a solo exhibition, and when I sent a pitch to a local gallery in Williamsburg, I didn't expect much. But the curator, a sharp, silver-haired woman named Elise, responded 2 days later with, "Let's talk. Your work is electric." I hadn't told anyone from my family about the show. I hadn't told many people at all. Just a handful of trusted friends, colleagues, and creatives I'd met over the past year. I wanted the opening night to be small, authentic, warm. I didn't need applause. I needed presence. People who saw me. People who didn't look through me. As opening night approached, the gallery helped me prepare. Invitations were digital and exclusive. The flyer featured a soft sketch from my collection, an open door floating in the sky. I titled the exhibit, Threshold, because that's what this was. Not a finale. Beginning. The night of the show, the gallery glowed. Soft lighting, ambient jazz humming through the speakers, the smell of fresh-cut eucalyptus in tall glass vases. I wore black silk and soft gold earrings. Not flashy, but confident. For once, I wasn't blending into the wallpaper. I was the wall itself, holding up my own truth. The early guests arrived. My therapist Janine even showed up, smiling proudly, champagne flute in hand. A few of my new clients came too, along with a few design school peers I hadn't seen in years. People moved slowly through the space, pausing, reflecting. I stood quietly near the back wall, watching as they leaned in toward the pieces, reading the titles. This one forgot me. They laughed at the gate. Silent dinner. There was one piece I had placed near the far end of the room, an oil painting of two women standing on opposite sides of a wedding aisle. One was translucent, barely sketched. The other was vibrant, painted in full color. The placard simply read, "Sister guest list removed." People lingered at that one. Some even cried, felt proud. And then I felt the room shift. It was subtle, like the way animals know a storm is coming before the clouds roll in. I turned just in time to see her walk through the doors. My mother, Diana Lee, and trailing behind her, her best friend Gloria and a much younger woman I didn't recognize, though she looked vaguely like someone from Brielle's social circle. They weren't invited. They weren't supposed to be here. I froze for half a second. Then I calmly walked over to the event coordinator, a gentle intern named Milo, and asked, "Did someone let them in?" He blinked nervously. "They said they were family. Claimed you'd forgotten to add them to the list." They seemed authoritative. Course they did. I exhaled slowly. "It's okay," I said softly. "Just stay close in case I need you to escort someone out." He nodded, clearly rattled. I turned back to the space, scanning for her. There she was, already deep into the exhibit, a glass of wine somehow in her hand, standing before threshold number 6. All dressed, nowhere to go. That one was about the day of Brielle's wedding. The emerald dress, the locked gate, the security guard. The caption was a single line. "I made peace with being unwelcome." My mother stood in front of it, lips pursed. Then the worst happened. He spoke loudly. To no one in particular. "I remember this day. I bought her that dress. Isn't it stunning?" Heads turned. I felt my skin prickle. A woman near her, a young artist I'd met at a local collective, turned to me with a confused expression. "That's your mom." I nodded once. And then Diana continued, walking from piece to piece like it was her exhibition. "Oh yes," she said airily. "That one's about our family, you know. Very emotional. I always told Samantha to channel her pain into something productive." She sipped the wine. "I guess she finally took my advice." I saw red. But instead of storming across the room, I stepped up to the small mic stand near the entrance. It was supposed to be for closing remarks, but I adjusted it slightly and tapped the top. "Hi everyone," I said calmly. "Thank you all for being here tonight. It means the world to share these stories in a room full of open hearts." People turned toward me. "These paintings are deeply personal. Many of them were born from pain but also from growth. From releasing the need to be understood by those who refuse to listen. From walking away from people who call you dramatic for bleeding in the wounds they gave you." My mother stood still now, lips tight. "I want to clarify something before the evening continues. Every brushstroke, every image, every caption, these are my stories. Not family anecdotes. Not collaborative memories. These are my lived experiences, shaped not by loving support, but by survival in the face of emotional erasure." A hush fell over the room. And while I didn't expect everyone who harmed me to show up here tonight, I suppose it's fitting. This exhibit is called Threshold for a reason. Because it's about walking through pain, not staying stuck in it. And tonight, standing here in front of all of you, I am finally completely on the other side. There was silence. Then slow, heartfelt applause. My mother didn't clap. She set down her wine, stiffened, and quickly left the gallery. Later that evening, a stranger approached me. A tall man in his 40s, suit slightly wrinkled, carrying a notebook. He introduced himself as an editor for a small arts and culture magazine. "That was bold," he said. "The way you handled that interruption. The whole room felt it." He paused, then added, "We'd love to interview you. About the exhibit, about reclaiming your story. There's something powerful here, Samantha. It's more than art, it's a movement." I smiled, genuinely peacefully. "I'd love that." That night, I stayed late at the gallery. After the guests left, I sat alone beneath my favorite piece. This wasn't my table, a depiction of a family dinner with an empty chair and a wilted napkin. And I cried again, not out of pain but release. The kind of crying that feels like freedom. Not long after, the story of what happened that night made its way back to my sister. How, I don't know. Probably through Gloria or one of the family orbiters. I never checked. But a week later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name in cursive. Inside was a card. "You really are good," it read. "Too bad it had to come at our expense. B. No apology. Just another dig." I laughed. They still thought this was about them. But this time I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because they were no longer the center of my story. They were just the footnotes. And I was already writing the next chapter. It had been 3 weeks since the gallery show. 3 weeks since my mother made a scene and stormed out after being gently, yet publicly, called out. 3 weeks since a recording of my speech, taken by a guest I didn't even know, quietly went viral on a few creative subreddits and feminist art Instagram pages. I hadn't posted it myself, but the internet has a way of amplifying raw truth, and before I could even process what was happening, I was being contacted by indie journalists, podcast hosts, and fellow artists asking for interviews, collaborations, and gallery placements. My inbox, once filled with cold pitches and unpaid work offers, now overflowed with praise and possibilities. And in the middle of that thrilling and terrifying whirlwind, I got a text from Brielle. "Hey, I saw some of the stuff online. Do you have time to talk sometime this week?" I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen, debating whether to even open the thread. After all, this was the same sister who had erased me, literally, from her wedding, humiliated me, used my work without credit, and then tried to block me from professional opportunities. She had ghosted every one of my attempts to communicate for nearly a year, and now, suddenly, she wanted to talk? I left the message unread for 3 days. Not out of malice, but because I needed time. Time to check in with myself and ask, do I actually want to hear from her? Or am I just conditioned to respond because she shares my DNA? On the 4th day I replied, "We can talk. 1 hour. Public place." We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. I arrived early and picked a table near the back, one with good lighting and a clear view of the entrance. I brought my sketchbook but didn't open it. Instead, I sipped a hot chamomile tea and tried to ground myself in the present moment. She would not rattle me. I was not here to be shamed or baited. I was here because I was choosing to be. Brielle arrived exactly 6 minutes late. She wore a designer trench coat, full makeup, and a faint air of apology dressed up as confidence. The moment she sat down, I noticed the difference in her energy. She wasn't angry. She wasn't defensive. She was nervous. "I wasn't sure you'd say yes," she said softly. I didn't answer right away. She looked around, then leaned in a bit. "I saw the video from your show. The speech. Someone posted it on TikTok, and it ended up on my For You page. Course. That wasn't meant for you," I said evenly. "But I suppose it was inevitable." "I know," she replied, fiddling with the sleeve of her coat. It's just, it hit me. Harder than I expected. I stayed silent. Her talk. I've been thinking a lot. About the wedding. About everything. I was so caught up in making it perfect, in what Mom expected, in what Ethan's parents expected. I didn't realize how cruel it all was. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to face it. I looked at her then, not with hostility, but with caution. This was not an apology. Not yet. Brielle, I said gently. I was never asking you to be perfect. I was just asking to be treated like a person. Sister. You didn't forget to invite me. You made a choice. She winced. I know. I've been replaying everything. I was embarrassed, I guess. You were always the one with the talent. The one Dad believed in. And after he died, I felt like Mom only had room for one of us, and she chose me. I didn't want to lose that. The words stung. Not because they were new, but because they were true. So instead, I said, you decided to erase me. Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't know how to fix it. You could have started by not trying to discredit my work. Lux Bride pulled my submission because someone claimed ownership of the designs. Was that you? She looked down. I didn't think it would hurt you professionally, she whispered. I didn't want you riding on the wedding's coattails after what happened. There it was. The honesty. Ugly and raw. I nodded slowly. That wasn't just petty. That was sabotage. I know, she said, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry. Finally. The words. But it didn't feel satisfying, it felt hollow. Like she wasn't sorry for what she did, only for how it made her look now that the tides had turned. I appreciate the apology, I said after a moment. But I need to be clear. This isn't going to undo everything. You don't get access to me just because I've found peace. That peace was hard-earned. And it didn't come from you. It came from walking away. She nodded slowly, tears falling freely now. I get it. I hoped maybe we could try again. I took a sip of my tea. Maybe. But on my terms. With boundaries. And honesty. She nodded again. I'd like that. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just allowed space. And that, I realized, was the most powerful thing I could offer. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just space, for truth, for accountability, for healing if it ever came. A few days after that meeting, I got a call from a documentary team working on a project about estranged families and creative rebirth. They'd seen the video, read my blog post, and wanted to feature me as one of their central stories. It felt surreal but fitting. My pain had become art. And that art was becoming impact. Not just for me, but for people like me who had been silenced, overlooked, left out of weddings, wills, conversations, families. Brielle sent me a follow-up text that week. Thank you for meeting me. I know it'll take time. I'll respect your space. And to her credit, she did. She didn't push. She didn't flood my inbox with emotional monologues. She gave me what I needed. My mother, on the other hand. She wasn't thrilled. A week after the cafe meeting, I received a voicemail. I heard you and your sister had coffee. I hope this doesn't mean you're buying into all that drama again. We've all moved on, Samantha. You should too. I didn't call her back. Instead, I took a long walk through Prospect Park, sketchbook in hand. I sat by the lake, watching the ducks glide through the surface, and I drew. New piece. A woman standing alone on a bridge, looking out. Not back. And I titled it, Peace Doesn't Ask Permission. 'Cause it didn't. And neither would I anymore. The air had just started to turn crisp when the email came. It wasn't a phone call or a heartfelt letter. Just a flat 2-sentence message from my mother's Gmail account with the subject line, Thanksgiving. No greeting. No warmth. Just, dinner will be at the house. 3 p.m. Bring a dessert if you're coming. I stared at it on my laptop, my tea cooling beside me, and for a moment I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, because it was so on-brand. After everything, after a year of silence, public embarrassment, betrayal, and a cold war of indirect comments on social media, This was my mother's version of an olive branch. A generic, passive-aggressive email. Not even a phone call. Not even my name. I didn't respond. Not immediately. I wasn't even sure I wanted to. Brielle texted the next day. Hey, Mom sent out the Thanksgiving invite. No pressure, but it would be nice to have you there. Ethan's parents will be out of town, so it'll just be us. I told her I wouldn't come if you weren't invited. I appreciated the gesture. Really, I did. But something about it still felt performative. Like Brielle wanted a clean photo for Instagram. Thankful for family. More than she wanted actual reconciliation. And yet, there was a small part of me, buried somewhere under layers of hurt and growth, that ached for that table. That familiarity. That sense of belonging. But then I remembered something. A promise I made to myself after the art show, when I was cleaning up wine glasses and staring at the paintings still hanging on the walls. I had whispered it aloud, just to myself. You will never beg for a seat at their table again. And I hadn't. Had built my own. That year had been transformational. After the gallery show, my career blossomed in ways I hadn't dared to imagine. I took on fewer client projects and began selling prints of my original work online. A local arts nonprofit offered me a paid residency. I began teaching weekend workshops to young artists in underserved communities. Something I had always wanted to do. I also fell in love. His name was Marcus. Writer. Quiet, grounded, the kind of man who listens with his eyes, not just his ears. We met at a creative showcase where he was reading a short story and I was showing a piece titled, She Sat at the Kids' Table. He laughed at the title when we were introduced, not because he found it funny, but because he said he understood exactly what that meant. What it meant to feel like you were always the afterthought. We started with coffee and ended with comfort. No games, no power struggles. Just two scarred souls slowly learning to trust the tenderness. So when November rolled in and the city trees turned to fire orange, I knew what I wanted. I was going to host Thanksgiving myself. No competition. No passive-aggressive comments about pumpkin pie. No, did you see what your sister wore? Gossip. Just a simple gathering of people I loved. Friends. Chosen family. The kind of humans who had cheered for me when I cried at my own art show. Who brought me tea during deadlines. Who texted me proud of you with no occasion necessary. I sent out invitations via email. Hand-designed, of course. The heading read, A Seat at My Table. Thanksgiving, 3 p.m. Brooklyn. When Brielle texted again, asking if I was going to reply to Mom's invite, I finally answered. Thanks for thinking of me. I'm hosting my own this year. You're welcome to join. I hit send and waited. Full day passed. That's unexpected. I don't think Mom will like that. I replied simply. She doesn't have to. I do. I didn't hear from Brielle again for a few days. And honestly, I didn't miss it. Instead, I filled my time shopping for groceries, making a playlist, borrowing folding chairs from neighbors, and practicing sweet potato casserole recipes. Marcus offered to roast the turkey, and my neighbor Camila said she'd bring her famous cornbread muffins. We didn't coordinate outfits or stress about matching china. We just prepared with joy. The morning of Thanksgiving, the apartment smelled like butter and cinnamon. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window as I chopped herbs and Marcus quietly hummed to a jazz playlist. My heart felt light, full. Around noon my phone buzzed. New message. From Brielle. Is your invitation still open? Blinked. I hadn't expected that. Yes. Always. Sent back. She arrived at 3:30 p.m. Lone. I answered the door wearing an apron dusted with flour and a soft smile. She looked around at the warm chaos. People laughing over board games in the living room, Marcus uncorking a bottle of wine, the mismatched napkins and thrifted centerpiece, and she stood there wide-eyed. This is, she started. Different. He offered. She nodded. Yeah. But it feels nice. I took her coat and led her in. Introduced her to my people. People who didn't know her as the sister who excluded me. Just as Brielle. A guest. She sat next to me at the long table we'd squeezed into the apartment. There were no assigned seats, no rehearsed speeches, just clinking glasses and stories and laughter. Halfway through the meal, someone asked me what I was most thankful for. I looked around. At the candles flickering gently. At Marcus's hand resting lightly over mine. At Brielle, silently chewing her food, listening. And I said, I'm thankful for second chances. Not the ones given to others, but the ones I gave myself. The chance to stop shrinking. To stop waiting to be chosen. The chance to choose me. There was a soft silence after that. Not awkward. Reverent. Later that night, after everyone had gone and we were stacking plates in the kitchen, Brielle turned to me. I had no idea, she said. How loved you were. How whole you seem now. I am whole, I said. I had to leave the people who made me feel like I wasn't to find that. I'm sorry I made you feel less than, she whispered. I'm sorry too, I replied. For hoping you'd be different before you ever said you were ready to be. She nodded slowly. Thank you for letting me come tonight. Thank you for showing up, I said. That's more than most ever do. And that was it. Not a dramatic reconciliation. Not a perfect ending. But a moment of truth. Real one. And that was enough. Winter came early that year. A sudden chill swept over Brooklyn, frosting the edges of windows and blanketing the sidewalks in a hush. The city felt quieter, slower, like it was catching its breath. And so was I. Thanksgiving had passed, not with dramatic tears or televised family meltdowns, but with warmth and grace and something I hadn't felt in a long time. Agency. I had chosen my peace. And I had offered space to someone who once took everything from me on my terms. That mattered. Few weeks later, something unexpected happened. I received an email from the director of a mid-size New York arts foundation. They had seen my gallery show through a blog write-up and invited me to apply for their competitive spring grant program for emerging visual storytellers. The grant came with funding, a solo exhibit, and a featured spot at their annual creative summit. Essentially a spotlight that could shift the trajectory of an artist's entire career. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want it, but because somewhere deep down, I was still unlearning the belief that I wasn't meant for something that big. But Marcus looked at me as I read the email aloud and said, You know this is for you, right? They're not doing you a favor. They're recognizing what's already true. So I applied. Poured my soul into the proposal. I submitted a portfolio filled with the pieces born out of my deepest heartaches. The Invisible Sister, Kids Table. Her name was missing, and a new one I'd titled, Forgiveness is Not a Feast. Every image told the story I had once tried to silence inside myself. Now it was art. And art, unlike approval, was something I owned entirely. In early January, the acceptance email arrived. I had been chosen not just for the grant but as the featured artist of the year. I was stunned. Not numb, not in denial, but utterly still. For once, something good had happened and I didn't flinch, didn't brace for it to be taken away. I simply let the joy in. I shared the news with my closest circle, Marcus, Camila, a few friends from the workshop. Their joy was electric. Marcus picked me up and spun me around in our tiny kitchen. You did it, he said, laughing. You won. And I had. Not because I had beaten anyone else, but because I had finally chosen myself. And the world had met me there. Course the news traveled. Art world circles overlapped, and soon enough, the family grapevine had caught wind of my growing recognition. It wasn't long before I received another unexpected message, this time from my mother. Voicemail. She sounded polite. Almost unfamiliar. Hi, sweetheart. I saw the article about your upcoming exhibit. That's something, isn't it? I was thinking maybe we could do a lunch. Just the two of us. Catch up. Let me know. I listened to it twice. Then deleted it. She hadn't called when I was painting in my apartment at 2 a.m., trying to process why my name had been left off my own sister's wedding website. She hadn't called when I sent the wedding invitations she praised but never paid for. She hadn't called when I was crying in the subway, trying to salvage a job after my work was pulled. But now that strangers were recognizing my voice, she wanted to meet for lunch. I didn't hate her. I truly didn't. But I didn't owe her access either. Instead, I wrote her a letter. Dear Mom, thank you for reaching out. I'm in a season of protecting my peace, and that means I'm saying no to things that don't feel safe or healthy for me. I'm proud of the work I've done, and I know it's not something you always understood. I hope you're doing well. Sincerely, Samantha. No sarcasm, no venom, just a clear boundary, delivered kindly. Brielle, meanwhile, showed up differently. She came to one of my weekend art classes and sat in the back, quietly watching kids paint animals with neon watercolors. She came to our small New Year's party and brought homemade cookies. She even helped clean up when it was over. Not once did she ask for anything in return. Not a post, not a shout-out, not even a photo together. She was just present. That mattered more than any apology. The Grant exhibit opened in late March. It was held in a minimalist gallery downtown, the kind with exposed white brick and polished concrete floors. I was given a wide, tall room to fill entirely with my own voice. I named the show Uninvited, The Cost of Conditional Love. Each piece had a plaque with a handwritten note describing the emotion behind it. Not just what it was about, but why it hurt. Some viewers cried. Some nodded quietly. Some asked me if I was afraid to share so openly. No, I answered. Because when I lost their version of love, I found myself. The night of the opening was filled with laughter and tears and toasts. Marcus gave a speech that made everyone choke up. Camila brought champagne and made everyone promise to support me on Patreon. Brielle came too. This time with no pretenses. She didn't try to stand in front of a camera. She just stood beside me. I appreciated that more than she'll ever know. As I walked through the room that night, watching strangers stand before paintings that once lived in the shadows of my pain, I realized something. I wasn't supposed to win. Not by their standards. I wasn't supposed to find love after being called too sensitive. I wasn't supposed to build a career after being called just a hobbyist. I wasn't supposed to be heard after they decided my story didn't fit the narrative they wanted to tell. But I did win. Not in spite of them, but because I stopped waiting for their permission. I still have that emerald green dress from the wedding I was never invited to. It hangs in my closet, unworn, beautiful. Sometimes I take it out and touch the fabric, not with sadness, but with gratitude. It reminds me of the version of myself who kept trying. Who poured herself into others, who just wanted to be seen. She deserved more. So I became the person who could give it to her. I don't know if my mother will ever change, or if Brielle and I will ever be close. But I no longer measure my worth by their proximity. I'm full. I'm whole. I'm mine. And to anyone out there listening, to anyone who's been erased, excluded, made to feel like a footnote in someone else's success story, please hear me. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're not a background character in your own life. You deserve a seat at the table, or better yet, a table of your own. Because sometimes the best thing they ever did was not invite you. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it resonated with you even a little, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more real, emotional, and empowering stories like this. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, share it with them. Because healing starts when we realize we're not alone. I'm Samantha, and this was the story of how losing my seat at their table helped me build one that finally felt like home. Thank you for watching. Until next time. Stay soft, stay strong, and stay you.